The sexual health is always the hardest for me to tease out, due to the what I see the massive psychological components with it. You know, you have somebody who, yeah, I think every guy's been where you're with a new hot chick for the first time and you get so in your head about it that you're basically your penis is numb. You've got neuropathy. You know, you're like slapping it in the bathroom trying to wake it up because you're so nervous that you're not going to be able to perform for this chick that you've fantasized about for months. And so I try to work that out with a guy. Is this actual organic, or is this just psychological here? And so it's really important to try to tease that out. And then the other thing I think we touched on a little bit in the last podcast was teasing out the desire or libido as a maturing adult with other responsibilities. Josh and I had this conversation the other day where Josh is like, yeah, weekends are kind of like my wife and my time to do things, because throughout the week we're just so busy with work and the dogs and bills and everything, that sex is kind of way down on the importance list. And then weekends, when everything is taken care of, we can relax and let ourselves go. And I think a lot of guys have that. I think usually around 30 on, when your goals come more career based and family based, like the drive to reproduce is no longer as strong as it once was before you had the children and the career and everything. So what I'll tell guys is I kind of try to play out a scene like, okay, let's say that kids are at daycare, everyone's taken care of, all bills are paid, you got a massive bonus, you and your wife are on vacation, tropical, it's beautiful, she's in lingerie and asking for it. If you don't want it then, okay, there's an issue. But if it's just because at the end of a 12-hour day, after coming home playing with the kids and then going back to work for a few hours before you go to bed, that you're tired and your wife wants it, that's probably not low libido.
100%. That's completely true. I often say that the best fix to low libido is a holiday, because it's stress induced. And I think that I
Oh
think
yeah.
that it's and I find sometimes it can be, I don't know, surprising that and I don't mean this disrespectfully to people, but I find it sometimes that it can be surprising that people don't understand this. So I think it's really important to explain it in a way that's very non-judgmental and just very
Mhm.
clear. Is it like if you've got like a newborn, or like if you've got a new job, or you're getting divorced, or you're going through a period of stress in your life, it's okay not to want to jerk off anytime you got a spare moment. Like you probably shouldn't. Like it's like I've spoken to some guys before, and they're like, "Oh, my libido is really low." I'm like, "Dude, you're getting divorced. Like if you had a high libido now, you'd probably be on some kind of antisocial diagnostic spectrum. Like you're not supposed to. Like that's good. It's good that you don't have a libido now. Like you've got other important shit going on that's healthy. Um, so yeah, it's when you're 16, like I mean, there's surges of everything else going on. You just found out how to use this exciting new toy. Like I mean, it's and the most stressful thing you've got going on is maths homework. Like I mean, it's a completely different environment. But I understand that raging teenage libido is always going to be people's reference point, and I get that. And I think that there can be a good middle ground between that. But going to the psychological erectile dysfunction, I think that's a really good point. Um, because what I often tell guys is that like having erectile dysfunction in a relationship with a woman who you're relaxed by and that you love and that who cares about you and you're attracted to, versus sleeping with random women off Tinder that you don't know. I
Right.
mean, maybe it's good that you're not getting an erection in those situations. Maybe your body is telling you something. Maybe there's a whole bunch of red flags that he's seen that you haven't. But that first time of vulnerability before intimacy, especially depending on how your self esteem is and if you had issues in the past, not being able to perform in a situation like that due to anxiety, like that's probably happened to everyone at least once. And if guys say, "Oh, it's never happened to me,"
Mhm.
okay, you're the exception to the rule. It's probably happened to everyone else at least once. That's okay. That's
Right.
where you need to learn about breathing, or that's when you need to slow the intimacy down and get to know each other first. Go to church. But it's
Yep.
like those kind of things. It's it's like I understand because those situations are stressful. They can be humiliating. If that's never happened to you before, it can be especially if you really like the girl, it can be the most anxiety producing thing, and it can lead to all kinds of other stuff. But that's very. But the thing that I will add in that is a caveat, because I like that this podcast is probably going to confuse people more than answer questions. But there's the other side to this that I think is important, is that when you've got high testosterone versus when you don't, the thing that I can attest to as someone who had low testosterone up until I was 25, um, is that I was still very attracted to women for that first, the formative years of my adult life. Very attracted. But what I didn't have was that feeling of lust, that feeling of animalistically like, and I feel like that is what overrides the performance anxiety. I feel like that feeling of lust biologically and physiologically counteracts that stress response to the point where you're like, oh fuck yeah, I'm worried I'm not going to perform well. I'm worried about this. I'm worried about that. But fuck it, like that thing. That's what prevents the other guys. I feel the high testosterone guys from getting as much performance anxiety. So I feel like that component of like physical, like lustful desire, like for the physical female form, especially if it's someone who you genuinely love and care about as well. That's very strong, and
Yeah.
I think that's activated by testosterone. So I think you're more prone to getting that performance. I think anyone can get that, but I think the lower your testosterone level, the more prone you are to getting that in those encounters.
Interesting. Yeah, for me, like even when I had insanely high levels of androgens and I was almost like at a sexual deviant point, it was weird because intimacy was always so much more important to me than just lust. Like I had to, even if it was a random hookup, I'd been with a lot of women, not a bragging or anything, but I would have to somehow tell myself like I really care about this person and fixate on things that I like really liked in her. And then eventually I realized like this is just stupid. I just need to find one person who I actually really love, instead of tricking myself into getting into this. But yeah, I think the psychological thing and working with a mate, the first thing I usually tell guys is, if you're not with somebody that you're comfortable enough to talk about this thing with, and let's step back a little bit and re-examine that first, re-examine your relationship. Like you said, should you even be sleeping with this person in the first place? And the thing that's more powerful than anything is just being open and having a partner in that person. Hey, I'm a little nervous right now. You're really fucking hot. It's getting in my head. Could we slow down for a sec? Maybe touch it this way. I like, when that kind of thing happens. And when that you have that vulnerability with that person and they're accepting and they understand, it's huge and that's beautiful. And that's usually when things will be good and you stop thinking about it. So that's the first step that I tell guys who are listening. Just try to make a connection with the other person and be open and work through it. And usually just that one experience, you feel comfortable moving forward.
Yeah, this is such a tricky thing for guys because, like, one, I've been there, and two, like, I've spoken to a lot of guys about this, and I think it's such an interesting conversation because the other part is that guys are worried that if they do speak that out, that the girl's going to lose respect for them because they're going to be like, oh, well, like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I get that. Like, if you read like the Rollo Tomasi stuff, the red pill stuff, or the hypergamy stuff, like, that's all stuff that's like drilled into you in terms of not wanting to show weakness. And I get that. But at the same time, what Adam said, like actually just bringing that up and almost like having them like flagging it with them so that they give you almost permission if you fuck up and that you're not worried
Mhm.
about it, that will often resolve the problem. And I really
Right.
believe and I might not have said this a few years ago, but now as someone who's, I've, dated, had different experiences, good and bad dating women, and I stand by that the right kind of woman who you'd want to marry wouldn't leave you or think of less of you over something like that. The certain kind of girls would, they'll lose respect for you but
Right.
they're probably not the kind of girl that you want to marry if that's what's going on. Um,
Exactly.
so I get that it's like a vulnerability thing, but I think that like if you can just like flag with them and be like, hey, there's a chance this might happen. It's just because I'm nervous and I find you super attractive, and if it does, just let's just like kiss and cuddle for a bit and keep going, and then it's good. And if they respond well to that, you're gonna be sweet. You're gonna be fine. And I tell
Yep.
guys, if you're in this situation, like you need a winning streak. And once you have a winning streak, then it's gone and you're good. You need to get on a winning streak. And I think 5 to 20 milligrams of tadalafil, that's not going to overcome the performance anxiety because that's a cortisol adrenaline stress response thing. But if you feel your erection more engorged than it's ever been before, like you feel yourself swinging at like 110, 120%, that confidence is going to override the other stuff. And that's going to help. And
100%.
that's what I like to use as medications for insurance policy. I think it's also great because you're going to get more natural erections without worrying about it, and I think that can inspire intimacy when they're around. I think
Yep.
that's really therapeutic and really helpful for the situation. Um, and then if worse, like people in this situation need to learn how to meditate, you need to learn how to breathe, control your stress response. And then if
Mhm.
you're really in a situation like that, don't take something like Valium or Xanax. Look at like a natural calming supplement that's not anti-androgenic. theanine, a bit of CBD, a bit of phosphatidylserine. I've got lectures on all of those on YouTube. Something like that to just calm the nerves and take an edge off. That with a bit of tadalafil and a bit of a conversation, and like you'll be you'll be totally in the zone.
Yep. It's funny, you and I have never talked about this, but I give the exact same advice almost,
Cool, cool, wicked.
it's funny because I think experience just, yeah, it, you see it happen and work, and we've had our own personal experiences and know it works. Back to kind of like the whole red pill thing and thinking that a woman will lose respect for you. I personally don't think that that's likely true due to the fact that I think most people are highly self-important and always think about their self. And I think what will happen more often than not with a woman is if you're limp, they're going to think it's their fault, not yours. They're going to think, this guy thinks I'm ugly, you know? So they're probably more thinking about what they did to you. And it's also nice to tell them, hey, I'm really attracted to you. You know, I'm so attracted that I'm getting nervous and a little bit in my head, you know, and that's going to probably make them be more attracted to you too and realize, oh, he thinks I'm really hot, you know, because everybody cares about themselves. And then, you know, to your point you know, using the tadalafil, it's exactly what I'll tell guys. Like, let's use it the first time with the girl. Like after it's already been hard and you've got comfortable and you know you can please her, because I think most guys really care about that too. Like, am I pleasing? You know, or they should, I hope. After you have that one victory, usually downstream from that, you never, you know, go again. That's why like hooking up with an ex, even though it's been years, usually it'll be really great sex because you guys are comfortable. You've had millions of victories with her. You know, it's really easy to get that hard again when you're with her. It's not new and novel and scary. She's seen you, you know, she's seen your weird mole that you got on your ball. You're not afraid of things, you know?
Okay, now I know that you've got a weird mole on your ball. Yeah,
I actually don't. I promise I don't.
yeah, yeah. Where did that come from? Yeah, yeah. No, it's 100% it. Like there's this like I don't know. I'm maybe I'm old fashioned and conservative or born in the wrong era or something. But like I think that the bond between a man and a woman sexually is very sacred. I think that the act of sexual intercourse is it's a very very intimate experience, and it's a very I think it's a very powerful experience, and I think it's something that people need to take really seriously. Um, and I think that when it's treated like that, I think there's less erectile dysfunction because if it comes later in the bond, I think people are going to be more comfortable. But at the same time, the later it comes in the
Mhm.
relationship, the more pressure or expectation there is because now you actually care about the girl. So it can go both ways. But when I look at it
Right.
in terms of what performance anxiety is, it's a stress response. Blood is getting diverted away from the extremities. What what makes you less stressed in situations like this? Feelings of familiarity. So the more comfortable you are around the person, the less likely it's going to happen. And I think that's taking that bond seriously and breathing and slowing down and really, and it sounds lame, but it's totally important. Like really focusing on your connection with the person that you're with. Um,
Mhm.
that is advice that can often really help people. And I think having the tadalafil and having something to calm the nerves physically and consciously going in with like, hey, I've had a conversation and everything's cool. I think that that's a way that you can really open up a really good intimate connection because I think that should be the goal of sexual intercourse, unless the goal is to make child. And and I think that that's something which having a conversation like that is the first thing that can open up that door. And I think that the converse to what you said is completely right in terms of people care way more about themselves than anyone else. And I think that
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that a lot of the time, the things that people are worried about happening often isn't actually the thing that's going to be a problem. And I think that, yeah, from my own experience, having conversations like that when I was younger, when I had that issue, it was always very well received, and it always fixed the problem straight away.